just wanted to let you know. Okay. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you all here tonight. Fortunately, there's no extreme winter weather right now, so it's a good night to be here. Please help yourself to the treats provided by our guests in NYSEG. So tonight's clean heating and cooling event, like I said, it's going to be recorded. We're going to put this online so people can watch it down the road. And as part of the Village of Lansing's Clean Energy Communities Goal, we've been working with clean energy, within our clean energy communities goals for about 3 years now. We're excited to host co-host this community event with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County, New York State Electric and Gas Corporation, and Earth Sensitive Solutions. And you'll hear about all of these if you don't already know them later in the presentation. This is an informational event only, and the Village of Lansing's participation in this event does not constitute endorsement of any participant's commercial services or products. We're happy to work with people that are in this room, but we can't really endorse them because that would be considered gifting by the state of New York. So to move ahead, it's a little bit after 7. I will watch the screen for people who are trying to join. I will turn it over to our facilitator for the evening, Guillermo Metz. Guillermo has been working with us, I guess, for a little over a year now or more. He's an energy and climate change team leader with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County. So please welcome Guillermo.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to sit for the purposes of if anyone's on Zoom, it makes it easier for them to see everything. But you can see slides, hopefully okay. I'm going to run through some slides. Essentially, I run what's Ronnie said is the energy and climate change team, and we've programmed with NYSEG, who's represented here with Gavin. So they'll be able to answer any questions you have about the overall program. And essentially, this is about the non-pipes alternatives program. That is, the intent is to resolve some of the reliability issues along the gas infrastructure in Lansing. So as everyone in the area knows, there's a gas moratorium since about 2016. And so I'll run through some of the history of that and why it was instituted in the first place, and then what this program is intended to do and what it's trying to do. And Jared's here from Earth Sensitive Solutions, which I'll get into, is one of the companies, essentially one of the partners in the whole portfolio of projects that is addressing the gas reliability issues. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, if there's any. Like I say, this is really about the whole sort of portfolio of projects. One of the biggest ones is around heat pumps and trying to get folks to convert to heat pumps in the in all of Lansing area. It also goes down, I'll show you a map, into parts of Ithaca, the town and city of Ithaca, parts of Dryden, that also have some effect on the gas pressure here in Lansing. So we will not get into a lot about heat pumps in the presentation, but happy to talk about them. There's a couple of folks here from Halco who I'm sure are happy to talk about heat pumps, and also insulation, weatherization of your homes. So making your house a little more comfortable and then upgrading or changing over to heat pumps and getting off gas. So that's essentially what we'll be talking about. But like I say, if there's any questions as we go along, feel free to jump in. So the background again is because there's this reliability issue along this whole section of the gas infrastructure, there's been a gas moratorium since early 2015, actually. And so the issue is that at the peak days, which at this point are the coldest days when everyone turns on their heat and the gas demand is highest, that the pressure in the line could drop below what's considered safe. So the concern is that, let me go back a bit. The concern is that the gas pressure is what you need to keep the pilot lights going and things like that. So when it drops below a certain pressure, there is that danger of pilot lights going out and just people not getting the gas supply that they need at that end of the line. That hasn't happened. That's never happened anywhere here in this area, but the modeling showed that on the coldest days, it could have happened, or it could start to happen, and that's the concern. So basically, before it happens, NYSEG was looking into, like, let's do something about this before it actually does happen. So there's a couple of different things NYSEG proposed to try to address this, and traditionally, what was done is you bring in more gas. So the first response was NYSEG worked with a bunch of other contractors, and they designed an expanded, enlarged pipeline to bring more gas into the area. That's what's traditionally done, essentially. The other proposal that was kicked around by a lot of folks, or a few folks, including a whole consortium from the county and some folks from Cornell, was to put gas compressors along the pipeline at different strategic spots. So you sort of shoot the gas along, and then you increase the pressure as needed, shoot it along a little bit further, increase the pressure. So the amount of gas isn't changing, but the pressure could be kept up. The third option developed after a bunch of time and conversations with folks in the community and experts at Cornell and a bunch of other people, said, well, let's take a step back, and what happens if we try to reduce the gas demand in the first place? What would that do to the pressure? And this took several years of conversations with NYSEG and proposals to the PSC, the Public Service Commission, and the Department of Public Service has to approve all projects that NYSEG wants to propose. So they knew what the pipeline was going to cost, and they said, well, what if we spent less than that on a suite of projects? We'll put out an RFP, a request for proposals, to the wider community to come up with solutions that would bring down the demand and see what we could do. And if these can solve the problem, we're willing to go that route. So the benefits are that it saves NYSEG and therefore the ratepayers quite a lot of money overall. This suite of projects, although there's a fair amount of expense behind them, it's a lot less than bringing in the pipeline. Health and safety are improved, reducing gas use overall. There are health concerns with gas in the home. There's safety concerns that really aren't there with some of the alternatives that we'll get into. Climate change is being, more and more a concern that needs to be addressed, and the state at the same time, this is 2015, 16 through 18, around, more like 2020, the state was getting toward developing the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which ultimately regulated, it required changes, a certain amount of basically decarbonization of the whole grid and of reducing fossil fuel use across all sectors. And so these things were starting to align, and there are already affordable, off-the-shelf solutions. And even going back to 2016, 2018, heat pumps and things were really good, and they've only gotten better. So when people ask, do even air source heat pumps work in our climate, they absolutely do, and we can get into those a little bit more specifically. But like I say, the solutions were there. So September 2020 was when the second round of proposals actually got accepted. So the suite of, originally it was 7 projects, it's been cut down to 5 now that have survived sort of the contracting phase with NYSEG. So these were approved in June 2021. Around the middle of last year, some of the projects started to get in service, and we'll get into the specific projects. The goal was to reduce gas use by about 566 therms, which we'll get into what that means exactly. And it is a 3-year program, roughly starting from about June of last year. So we've got another 2.5 years, well, no, more like 2 years, 1.5 years left on the program to try to meet this goal. The portfolio of projects, these are the 5 that I'll get into some detail on some of these. Not all of these are contracted even today. So I can get into detail on some of them, not all of them. So residential heat pump program with additional incentives. we'll get into. That's the big one that Jared leads with Earth Sensitive Solutions. Commercial ground source heat pump system, I'll get into that one. There's a community ground source heat pump system that we can't actually talk about much, but it's exciting. If it does, it's moving along, so there's still promise for that one. Energy efficiency at 2 public authority buildings, which is essentially the Lansing Central School District, which I can talk about, and education outreach, which is what we at CCE do. So the first one, the Cornell Child Care Center. This is the first actually geothermal system on Cornell's Ithaca campus, surprisingly. The building itself is not connected to the campus district heating system, which governs a lot of the energy upgrades that they do on campus. The buildings on Central Campus are all connected essentially to the combined heat and power plant that is separate from any of the grid. So they essentially have what they consider very low carbon energy already, and it's in their own grid, but this building's not on it. So it was a good candidate for a geothermal system. It's about 16,000 square feet, about 150 kids go to it overall, and the reduction is about, I'm sort of mixing terms here, but this is 1,000 cubic feet, I'm sorry, yeah, 1,000 cubic feet per hour, and this is a different way of looking at it over therms of gas. And it's currently in the early construction phase, and this is in a photo I just got yesterday from the team. So they've started the groundwork out back for the wells that they're going to be putting in. They're going to be doing the interior work over the summer when there's actually fewer kids. Lansing Central School District, a lot of the projects that were accepted ultimately were to remove the customer or the entity off of gas completely. Central School District looked into, they have a geothermal system currently, they looked into expanding that to allow for more of the buildings to be to get their heat and cooling from the geothermal system. That didn't work financially. It was prohibitively expensive for them at the time. At the same time, they were looking into upgrading their existing gas boilers and installing some controls, and they went with that option. So the Public Service Commission basically approved that version of it. NYSEG was allowed to fund that part of it. Unfortunately, they weren't funded to do the whole full geothermal system. So this is basically staying on gas, but using much less of it. And again, the expected reduction there you can see is about 10 times as much as what we're seeing at the Child Care Center. And this hasn't started yet either. They're in the procurement phase and contracting to get the work done. So it's also moving along, but not quite happening. So we at Cooperative Extension, we essentially do outreach like this. We have done a few community events, tabling events, things like that throughout the community. We'll be looking to do some more throughout the whole program period. But essentially we're helping out to promote what NYSEG is trying to do. We feel like the need is there to really get the community engaged around the reductions. And so to that effect, we're doing some of these events. We're rolling out a couple of banners that you're going to start seeing around town. We're going to put one out here in front of the village. We're currently we're working with NYSEG to get approval for the design. So hopefully that'll be out within the next few weeks once we get it printed. So that is our role, and we're working closely with the other projects. Once they're further along, I'll talk about the one with Earth Sensitive Solutions, but the other ones are really just starting out. We'll be doing a lot more to promote them, to get community engagement around them, and just awareness of what's going on in Lansing as sort of a whole portfolio of projects. I will just introduce it, but the Earth Sensitive Solutions project is essentially, if folks have heard about a Heat Smart campaign, I hope it's okay to kind of compare it to that idea. There were solarized campaigns and then Heat Smart campaigns that a lot of people have kind of heard about. They happened in this area. It's a similar idea where a group, an entity sort of leads the effort, and that's Earth Sensitive Solutions. They're not actually installing any of the systems, working with the customers, but the intent is that they run the whole program, and they have partner contractors who they work with to do the actual work. So through this program, there's additional incentives on top of, so NYSEG has, like all utilities have in New York State, currently incentives for air source heat pumps, for air source heat pump water heaters, for geothermal systems, and those are available to anyone who has a gas system at this point. These incentives here are on top of those. Lansing is basically said, we need to further incentivize our residents, our community to get off gas. So on top of the existing NYSEG incentives, there's these additional incentives that, again, Jared can get into more specifically, and they're based on the amount of gas you're pulling out of the house. So they're really healthy incentives, because often the boiler, the furnace that was there typically is oversized, 80,000, 100,000 BTU. The incentives are based on all of that gas you're not going to be using. So they're quite healthy. And this one is going to be hitting essentially the bulk of the reductions through the whole portfolio. It's up to residents essentially and some commercial businesses to reduce their gas use, and sort of that's going to be really where we see the biggest amount of reductions. I don't have I thought I had the companies on here, but I can just mention them. So Halco, who's represented here, Halco and Snug Planet have essentially joined forces a couple years ago, and so they're treated as one of the companies. Daily Geothermal, Daily Mechanical?
Daily Electric.
Daily Electric, okay. Daily Electric is another, and then Van He Mechanical is the third one. And the way that the program is written, because NYSEG put out a request for proposals, anyone was welcome to apply, but once those companies were selected, that's it, it's closed. So fortunately or unfortunately, you have to go with one of the three companies, or four if you count, Halco, Snug, in order to get these additional incentives, just so you know. And then I will mention one other piece that, just to be aware of, there are additional statewide incentives that I just want to let you know about for anyone who's income qualified, that we have a lot of support for through Cooperative Extension, through another group. Sustainable Finger Lakes, not associated with us, but it also has additional incentives for mobile homeowners, which there are a few, not a ton in Lansing, but there are a few. And so if you know of anyone, these are for getting heat pumps and weatherization, insulation, et cetera, in mobile homes. And then for all the other homeowners, we can support you through Cornell Cooperative Extension, through what's called Smart Energy Choices, or the Regional Clean Energy Hub. Has various names, but right there, smartenergychoices.org, or Jack or Lee, that's their phone number, and we have contact information. There's brochures on their program in the back there, and there's actually a interest form. If you're interested, you can fill that form out and leave it with me, and I'll give it to them. But there is a significant amount of money for homeowners who are income qualified to get just a rebate. Essentially, if you need $12,000 worth of work, it will pay for up to $10,000. So it's a good chunk of money to get folks pretty far along the path to improving the performance of their homes, the comfort level, the health, and then also into heat pumps and things like that. So that's my contact info. Jared's here from Earth Sensitive, and Gavin's here from NYSEG. And now I will just open it up. If folks wanted to get specifically into heat pumps or just learn more about the program overall. We ran this to 8:30. I should have made it clear that we're not going to talk for an hour and a half. The intent was, if we had depending on the number of people, we can basically keep it as long as you all want. But I'm not going to talk at you for an hour and a half. So, yeah.
What does the area include besides Lansing? You said in the downtown area, Ithaca?
Do I not? I have it here. So yes, I should have said. So the question for the Zoom people is, what is the area, the geographic area that's included in the program? So the pink area here is 100% of incentives. So the basic idea is that there are high impact areas. So if you reduce gas in this higher impact area, that has the most impact. If you reduce gas in the yellow area, it contributes, but not nearly as much. And then in the orange area, in between the two, is sort of in between. So the highest impact area is 100% incentives, the orange is 40%, and the yellow or green is 10% of those additional incentives. So you have the regular NYSEG incentive, and then these additional ones, it's 100%, 40%, or 10%. And so you can kind of see it's about half of the city of Ithaca, some of the
What
towns.
street? On the north side. What street is at bottom between the yellow and the orange on the north side?
Yeah, so the boundary is not a particular street. It's not clear. If you go to our website, earthsensitive.com, there is a map in there. It's the same map, but the best way is just to put in your address and register, and whichever contractor you choose can confirm what address is actually would be applied for the incentive. So until we know the address, we can't confirm which area it's in.
And let me go back to that. Earthsensitive.com. So the process is essentially like a HeatSmart campaign. If you are interested at all, if you go, really the first step is you can go to our website just to learn more about it. If you want to, find out, it's anything that you want to brush up on. But essentially, it's to then connect with Earth Sensitive and enroll in the program. And there's, you can talk about it more, but there's no, you're not tied to anything, you haven't signed anything, you're just showing interest at that point. There's no commitment. And so at that point, they can follow up with you. There's really no commitment after you talk to a contractor. There's no commitment until you sign a contract. So you get quite a lot of information, I think. I don't know if you want to talk about how the process runs.
Yeah, so as Guillermo said, sign up on the website. It's earthsensitive.com/registration. And from there, you're merely asking for some basic contact information and an address. And that way it can confirm where the address of the home is and which zone it's in. And then, and also in there, you can select one of the contractors or no preference. And then that information is passed on to the contractor, and they would reach out, have a site visit, look at what your needs are, look at the existing equipment that's on site. And that existing equipment defines the actual incentive for your project. So it's based on the input rating of the equipment, which is kind of a nerdy term, but it's essentially the rate at which gas flows through that equipment. And so by removing that, we're reducing it by that amount. And so the rebate incentive is based strictly on that equipment that would be removed. And so generally the contractors look at all the gas equipment that's in the home. And then if you decide to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, you can get incentives accordingly.
So you could, like I was thinking about getting heat pumps and keeping my gas.
No.
Because it's inefficient.
Unfortunately, yes, it does require removing the gas appliance.
But you can get heat pumps instead of a furnace, and I can keep my gas stove.
Correct. We are incentivizing switching out gas stoves if you'd like, that can be included. But yeah, it's not required.
I will say we have information about induction cooking back there, and we do some classes periodically here and there on induction. If you're interested, we have some portable units that we can demo and show you that it's really just as good as gas, if not better.
I can speak to the induction units. My wife and I have been using those for the last 3 years, the portable ones. And it's amazing how quickly it responds to temperature changes. And when you turn off the heat, it stops immediately. We always liked cooking with gas instead of the normal electric range, but the induction elements are amazing, how responsive they are.
My favorite is, my daughter is 10 years old. She likes mac and cheese. So putting the pot on there and putting it on the power boil, it's boiling in less than a few minutes. Very quick.
Yeah, and then you take off the pot and it's hot, but it's not gonna burn you.
Yeah, it's warm.
So for kids, for, elderly folks, it's just a lot safer. There's a lot of advantages, and gas cooking, there's more and more evidence that it releases a lot of things that aren't particularly healthy to breathe, especially for kids and elderly. So yeah, the whole idea is to get completely off gas. If we were able to do the furnace, the boiler, the water heater, and the cooking, then you actually save quite a lot of money by cutting your gas line completely. I don't know if we should say, folks are not going to save a lot of money if you're on gas now and you're converting to electric, induction, but because you're able to size, in terms of the heating equipment, you're able to size it more appropriately. I think people do tend to save some money. In addition, the programs are doing the weatherization, the insulation, the air sealing work, alongside just, ripping out the old equipment. So that's going to, as well, save you money, make the home more comfortable, make it healthier. So it's not just a matter of, addressing that one unit necessarily.
Yeah, it kind of depends on your situation. So really, contractors will tailor it to whatever you have going on and you need to have modified, so.
So can you give an example of, let's say, I don't know, you've got a 1,000 square foot home, something like that, just a random sized house, and you're going to replace the furnace, right? So all the heating and hot water with a heat pump or something like that. What's the sort of general cost for something like that? Can you do it per square foot? Can you do it per 1,000 square foot? And with the incentives, what does it take you to?
Yeah.
Right? Is it 5 grand? Is it 50 grand? And what are those sort of numbers? Just round numbers, it doesn't have to be obviously a quote.
Yeah. I mean, the first answer is definitely, reach out and set up with a contractor for your specific. But, and actually on our website, we have a good breakdown of kind of a typical, we call 4-ton system, and it breaks down the potential incentives.
Should I go there?
Yeah, if you want.
I'll show you that.
It's on the main website, so. So it's, so 4 tons is a little big for 1,000 square foot, but it gives you a sense of, what's possible as far as, and that example is a geothermal system, not air source, but that's, I think that gives you a good idea of what's possible.
So I don't know if you want to walk through that.
Yeah, so as you can see there, you're placing an 80,000 BTU furnace and a 40,000 BTU per hour gas water heater, and replacing it with a single water to air heat pump.
So you would have to have ductwork,
Correct.
furnace heat, yeah.
Yeah, so again, that's where it depends on kind of what you have existing. I would say that a furnace is kind of the easiest to modify and drop in for all types of equipment. So that's a significant portion of people in this area have forced air, but certainly there are people who have hot water, and there are other solutions for that. So this example is just replacing your hot water heater and a furnace, approximate price of 48,000. The NYSEG incentive there is 18,000, based on the 80,000 and the 40,000 that is removed. And then the clean heat rebate that was mentioned earlier is included in that as well.
So let me just say, the gas one is what he's talking about, is what is through this program, through, just specifically in that geographic area.
Yeah.
The clean heat rebate is the one that's basically across the whole NYSEG territory, so that's available to everyone.
Yep. And those two incentives are kind of right off the top. And then, at least in the geothermal aspect, you have a 30% that's uncapped tax rebate or tax credit. And then the state also has a 25% capped at 5,000 for air source. I believe it's also 30% capped at 2,000. So there is additional money there for air source as well.
So it's significant.
Yes.
Yeah.
That 11.4 is cheaper than the furnace here.
That's the key.
Can you talk a little bit about how, so we have hot water baseboard, can you talk a little bit about the options for hydronic systems and geo versus air? The sort of, obviously geothermal is so much more expensive to install, and the efficiencies of that versus the cost of it, with an air source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so certainly with hydronic, you're looking at, I assume you have no cooling whatsoever.
We don't, just the.
Or window.
Yeah.
Yep. So I would say you have kind of two basic flavors, at least in the geothermal world.
Right.
You have a split, a mini split style, called high wall units.
Yeah, which that's only going to work in, you need one for every room.
That's right. Yeah, and so that it has that ability. You can put 6 to 9 heads on one compressor bearing unit.
Uh-huh.
And that can be placed, kind of throughout. They make different styles. They make ducted units. So you could start the entire first floor with a ducted unit, and then the upstairs could be high wall units. So there's a number of options of that. Or we do have water to water units. So you're making hot water for your either existing ones, or you can install fan coils, which is similar to the high wall of the refrigerant-based units. It would provide hot water or chilled water to those units, and provide the heating and cooling port. So I would say those are the two basic options.
So you have sort of a multi-split that's going to heat hot water. Would you use existing hot water baseboard, or is that?
The multi-split doesn't. That's that's refrigerant only.
Okay.
So you would essentially abandon your existing heating system.
So there's no way to connect into the hydronic to hot water baseboard to basically use like a hot water.
Yeah,
heater.
they do make one now. They do make a refrigerant to water heat exchanger, so you can produce hot water as well as the kind of the mini split style heads. So that is kind of just now coming on the market.
Hydronic system as well. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you have to upgrade the number of those.
Geothermal can't get you 180-degree water, which most baseboard is designed around. So there's ways to do what Jared was explaining. There's sort of ways where you can incorporate, and there's different ways to do it. But it takes a little bit of engineering and design to figure all that out. But it's doable. Okay.
Yeah. The other piece is you would not have the cooling, obviously.
Right.
So.
You won't have the cooling.
Yeah, so that's why we generally still provide fan coils of some flavor, but the cooling load is significantly less than the heating load, usually about half. So you don't need nearly as much equipment.
And that's one other piece when you think about, you know, the expense of a system or even the operating cost of a system, when you add in the cooling benefits, you know, it's built in essentially to heat pumps. Most of them.
Yep, so, and there is an incentive estimator on the website, as well as a operational cost estimator as well. So you can tailor based on the amount of therms you're consuming. So,
I feel a little bit ignorant.
sure, that's no
I
problem.
have a hot water boiler with
Mhm.
radiators. How do you replace that with a heat pump?
I mean, very similar to what we were talking
Okay.
with them.
You get the ducts on the wall high, the high wall
Yep.
ones?
Yep.
And you get rid of all the radiators,
It's not required,
Not necessarily.
yeah.
but they aren't gonna be functional.
They just, the capacity of them get reduced.
The challenges with the water temperatures is, hot water boiler is gonna produce about, 180 degree water most of the time. Geothermal can't do that, air source can't do that, so what you have to do is you can utilize existing distribution, with the understanding that you're gonna get less heat now out of that radiator because it's cooler water. So you have to, find a way to make up the loss, make up the difference. In some cases, you can get lucky and your house is over-engineered and you've got more distribution than you need, and it's fine. That does happen, or you can tighten up the building envelope with insulation, air sealing, or like Jared was saying, you can do ductless fan coils, ducted fan coils, something, so you can get that air conditioning, but also that second stage heat. So there's definitely ways to do it.
So there's heating the house, right? And then there's heating your water for showering and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
For your dishwashing, whatever, right? So maybe that was more of your question, like what, I understand the heating the house part. How do you heat the hot water?
Yep, there's several options for that as well. I would say the predominant one is a heat pump water heater. So it's a standalone tank with a little heat pump built into it. And that's taking the surrounding air in the space and basically removing that heat from the space and putting it into the tank itself. And generally they have some amount of electric heat so that if the conditions aren't right and it can't produce enough heat, the electric heat will kick in. So I would say that's the kind of the dominant flavor being used. But with the geothermal systems, there are other options. Many of them come with what they call de-superheater or a hot water generator. And it's a separate little heat exchanger that you kind of siphon off about 10 to 15% of the energy that you might use to heat the house. You can use that to heat a tank. Now, it's not 100%, so it's kind of a preheat versus a full heat pump type style. So, but it does save significantly, especially in summertime. But so that's certainly an option. But like I said, the hot water heat pump hot water heater is the most common use. Because that's kind of a one-to-one, you're removing this, generally a tank gas hot water heater, and you're replacing it with a heat pump water heater, and it's, nearly the same size.
And for these standalone heat pump water heaters, there are also incentives. So same deal exists for those. There's a NYSEG incentive for everyone. There's an additional incentive for the equipment that you pull out. So again, they are more expensive than a regular electric water heater, but with these incentives, it becomes pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So these numbers are for geothermal. How do the numbers look for air source?
Less.
Because we were told, our furnace is 70 years old, it's very inefficient. We need a new furnace, even though it's working fine. We were told $10,000 for a furnace and $60,000 for air source. Yes, no?
No,
It seems high to me, but
There's more, there's gotta be more to that.
yeah, I guess it depends.
60,000 for Geo, maybe.
Yeah,
So we need 4 air source, whatever they are, so we have 3 floors.
So you're talking about mini splits as well as the duct, do you have a gravity fed furnace?
That's what I was thinking.
Big,
Big old
big
furnace.
old,
Does
big
it have
old
gas,
round thing
potential
in your basement?
asbestos on it?
No, it's just a conventional gas burner.
Okay.
It's very simple, I mean, it's literally
Is
17.
there a fan on it?
Yeah, there's a blower.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah, the
charades.
big blower. It goes off like a 2 horsepower motor. It
Gotcha.
heats the house.
Belt driven, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, and I've been able to maintain it, for the last 30 years. But it's quite inefficient. So now what we're looking for is to see what's the most ecological and efficient way we can do this without breaking the bank.
So if there's, if you reported a bunch of ductless mini splits throughout the house, depending on how many you got, yes, actually, you could actually get close to that. If it was a simple take out your furnace, put in an air source, no, you're,
No, this would be needed lots of units.
yeah, so there's.
So it might not make sense for us.
Well, I guess it depends on what the incentive availability is for it, the system, yeah.
We're right in between the pink and the orange, I can't tell.
Well, we'd be happy to give you another opinion, but.
Well, in my sort of simple-minded way to think about this, and I don't really know a lot about this, but it appears that the ducting that we have in this old house is still in quite good condition. So is the problem that you can't burn BTUs at the rate that you need?
You need bigger ductwork with a heat pump than you do with a traditional fossil fuel system because the airflow requirements are different. But a lot of older houses, as I just mentioned, tend to be a little over-engineered, so you might have adequate ductwork, but that could be another issue. Whoever gave you those ductless system might have found that through a duct analysis that there was other problems that we had there too. So it's sometimes it's straightforward, sometimes it's complicated.
And it really does require the whole home energy assessment, lower door test, duct analysis to know for sure, because like you were saying, oftentimes, your existing furnace, do you know how many BTUs it is?
Yeah, but that's
It's-
hard.
it's- it's
We don't
hard.
need to
It's like
go through that
100,000
right
or
now, but I
something.
could tell you at the end, I got all
It's big,
the time.
80,000. Bigger than efficient.
Can you explain a little bit about ducted versus ductless? Does that just mean using the ducts in your current, if you have forced air heat?
yeah, it's essentially that you're moving air through a square piece of metal to deliver it to the space.
But you need to have that, like.
Typically-
I have the same system.
Yeah, the hot water baseboard.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
hot water baseboard, so.
Typically, if you have ductwork, you're gonna reuse it if it works. If it doesn't work, then the ductless is nice because you don't have to deal with ductwork. You just slap it on the wall, and it just hums along nicely on its own. So you're not having to deal with any kind of existing conditions. Same way.
Like our neighbors just installed some heat pumps, but, so they've got the unit outside and they've got something that runs up the side of the house.
Mhm.
That's still,
So actually,
that's still a ductless.
It's likely to.
So you have a refrigerant line in between the outdoor unit and the indoor unit.
kind of see, sort of. Really closely. So essentially, this is what's happening. I mean, this could be could be a geothermal system. This is an air source one. So yes, you have a unit outside that is collecting whatever little heat it can get from the air.
Yeah.
And even, 20 below, it can get a little bit of heat. And then through compressors, so the refrigerant will then expand and release its heat into the room essentially, and then do the same thing on the cycle. But inside, so there is no, you don't need the ductwork. If the ductwork is there, you can move the heat through the ductwork. Otherwise, you're just moving a little line of refrigerant through the house. And then these heads, essentially they're called, are fans that just blow air through the refrigerant. to heat up the room or cool it down. So, whereas, running ductwork is a bigger surgery in a house. Running the refrigerant line is really relatively simple and not very invasive. I can leave this up here.
And so like in the bathroom, you run a little tiny unit into each room, is that?
Generally not, once you get to those smaller spaces, you might use a little electric heater, because the amount of heat you need is not very much in those smaller spaces. So sometimes they get filled out with a little bit of.
So it's really like very patchy heat. So if you have, we have we have 3 floors with, living room, dining room, kitchen's all open in one area, but then there are 2 bedrooms and the same, and then a bathroom in the middle. So that means each room's gonna have heat, but the bathroom has to have electric. Is that?
Well, it kind of depends on, I think, so part of it is if the house is very drafty, you're going to feel that patchwork of heat and cooling in different areas. But the idea is if you can relatively well air seal and insulate it, then the heat will distribute and even out. So even though you have a patchwork system and maybe a head in one room that, the heat will, even out over.
Sort of, yeah.
You're not gonna feel it.
I'm just thinking.
Let's not care about a nice hot shower.
Yeah, really, there is if the room, like in this room, would you have heat on each end or just on one side?
The ceilings?
Yeah,
Let's say general length, but.
yeah.
This is a normal room, you could do it with one head on, sure.
But it's gonna be much warmer on one side and cooler on the other.
Well, it's throwing the air too, right? So it's actually blowing the air, it's not just radiating off.
Yeah. Some of them had pretty good throw across the room. So you can get, 13, 14 feet of actual air movement across the space on some of these units.
So that's half of this room.
Yeah, roughly.
So then you need one on the other side. I'm just really about the practicality of how many pieces.
Yeah, it certainly, it depends on kind of the load and the space. Here, cooling is probably the driver. So, you might have a decorative cassette type unit up high rather than high walls. But either, there's multiple ways to handle one thing. There's no, this is the way.
That was gonna be another question I had, is those cassette units, are there different styles, designs? Yeah, I was thinking like our upstairs is fully accessible through the attic, right? Like, are there ways of just having those cassettes hidden in the attic with just an vent or something like that? Or do they have to be like in room temperature?
They're generally in the space.
Got it.
If you're gonna have it in like the attic space, you would generally put it in a ducted types unit, and then just run short runs to the space.
That's possible.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
I
there's-
don't know, Halco's here, I don't want to highlight necessarily what Halco Snug is doing, but there are a variety of options for the thing itself. Like the unit that, as you visually see it, I don't know if you can talk to like what you offer in terms of not just those heads that people are sort of familiar with that are sort of clunky.
Yeah, oftentimes in second stories, if there's any kind of slope to the ceiling, then there's not a whole lot of high wall space to speak of, we keep saying these high wall units. But there are ones, they're called floor units, which is a little misleading because it's really just a low wall unit that's more of a square shape that can sit low on the wall, which is a little bit more where we're used to seeing heat coming from. And those can work really well. The ceiling cassettes are a little misleading. They're really made more for a commercial space. We tend to stay away from those. But as Jared was saying, we can put in ductwork as well to serve that whole upstairs. So it kind of depends on how many rooms we're serving. Once you get over a certain amount of, individual indoor units, then we want to put in ductwork because the scale tends to tip to making it more cost effective that way.
Yeah, you had a couple of small bedrooms per se, and maybe a bathroom or two on the second floor, that's a good solution, is a small air handler with ductwork to service those rooms, and then maybe the downstairs living room, dining room, kitchen's all big open space, you put a ductless unit on the wall, so heat pumps come in a lot of different flavors, so there's 99% of the time, there's a solution. It just, no matter, you know, HVAC design is a skill into itself, Jared can attest to that.
And we keep getting more options, so, yeah, if there's not a solution now, there will be soon.
It's really a case of getting on the website, scheduling some time.
The best time is to have somebody put their eyeballs on it, and so we can figure out what makes sense to you and what makes sense to the house, because every house is different, you know, I get those questions all the time. Oh, if my house is 2,000 square feet, what's it gonna cost? I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
Because I have no idea what your house is like. I mean, so there's a lot of testing you gotta do. You gotta look at the installation, you gotta look at the air leakage. There's so much more involved than just like, you know, I got this.
Right.
So, I mean, I can tell you 100 different things without even knowing what you're looking at. So, right.
That analysis is all free also. So folks, not just through this program, but the state has a program essentially that you get a free energy audit on your home. You know, and even if you've had one, they changed it. So even if you had one a year ago, 5 years ago, you can get another one. So, you know, that's the first step for everything. And it is free. You know, that's like, you know, getting a physical for your house. It tells you quite a lot.
But a little bit of time.
And there's going to be a lot that they can see that you really can't with your eyeballs in terms of the blower door and, you know, in many cases, an infrared camera. They can spot water issues in your walls that you're not even aware of. You know, so there's a lot of good reasons to go ahead and get that.
Can you talk a little bit about the tax credits? I know that, like, we're not able to take advantage of those because my dad's, he's retired and Jean's retired, so that we don't have much of a tax burden to balance out that tax credit. I know there's some programs like Empower. Can you just talk a little bit about what those options are?
Yeah, so essentially, Empower Plus is one of the main ones that this group deals with, but so Empower kind of combined a bunch of programs, assisted home performance, and all of that is now called Empower Plus. And so it's nice, it's under one umbrella, and that's a state program. It's income qualified, and I can run through the income qualifications just went up like yesterday or maybe this morning. So they went up a little bit, but it's, you know, based on family or home size, household size. And like I said, it's up to $10,000 for things like heat pumps, weatherization, insulation, all of that. Yeah, and again, you have to be income qualified to get that. There are some other programs, but we're not sure what's going to happen through the IRA funding. That's probably going to be another year before we see additional state incentives. So right now, this is all I know of.
Yeah, the tax credit, to my understanding, is, I don't know if transferable is the right term, but essentially you can continue to take it multiple years.
Yeah, you don't have to have the full burden. I think it's 5 years. You can.
That sounds right.
Keep taking bits of it.
Yeah.
There are opportunities to, I know we're talking about heat pumps today, but and reduction of gas, but are there opportunities to bundle with like solar incentives and that sort of thing?
So there's nothing through the NYSEG program that would add to, you know, to bundle. NYSEG program is really focused on gas, but there are, I mean, there's definitely other things. There's not like a, you know, a bundle A that you can say, I save 50% if I do this. So it's really just different programs that you end up putting together. But yeah, absolutely, for residential solar, there's incentives that are still relatively healthy. There is now community solar that you can buy into a solar farm and save money that way. But yeah, there's not like a package that you can.
An individual contractor might do something like that for you, but it's not something we're focused on.
we'd probably be having exactly the same discussion about electricity reduction in 15 years.
All the more reason to do someone now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get ahead of the game.
And I should say, so the reductions for the NICEAG piece of the program, you have to be on gas. So that's what we're talking about, is tearing out that gas equipment, that appliance. So if you're on propane or oil or anything else, there is no additional incentive, but there is still the initial incentive that's across all of the NICEAG territory for putting in equipment. So if you want to, put in heat pumps and you're on gas, on oil or propane or something else, which a lot of sort of North Lansing is, and a lot of other folks in the county, there's just the regular NICEAG incentive still.
And there's significant savings from those fuels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so propane, oil, and electric even are the most expensive fuels. You'll save significantly, and the payback period is quick, even though you don't get those additional incentives. Yeah, so the idea is, like we have another year and a half-ish on this program to show these reductions. We're about 20% along of the goal of the 100%. But the first year, really, it took a while to get everything going. So we're hopeful to still hitting that 100% target, but if you know of anyone, spread the word. Like you folks are, if you've got a dying system, if somebody has a brand new gas system, they're probably not the best candidate to swap it out for a completely different system.
But they're welcome to.
They're welcome to. Yeah. And there's the money available for it. But enough people, it's every 20 years or so, not every 70, but every 20 or 25, systems are starting to get swapped out usually, and that's when, we want to make sure people have the information and they know it's available, so that maybe this year it's not quite ready, but sometime next year it is, and this program's going to run out, but just let people know about their options.
Is the funding for the gas incentive likely to run out before those 3 years? I mean, or is there enough funding to kind of?
I don't think we're.
It's not gonna run out.
I don't think so. Run out of time before money.
Okay, all right. Good to know.
But don't wait.
No, well, it's.
That's why it's time.
Have you seen any indications from the state regarding the CLCPA that they would be extending programs like this or expanding programs down the road? Have you seen any kind of hope that they see that this works and it's made a difference?
Yeah.
Maybe, have you noticed that in the state assembly, or?
Sort of. So I don't know if you can speak to this, Gavin, but so this is the first what's called non-pipes alternatives project in the state, and one of the first in the country, where it was actually proposed to actually, we have a pipeline planned, we're going to explore other options completely away from a pipeline. And there are now others across the state, non-pipes and also non-wires alternatives. So not just expanding the wire infrastructure. So that's the same idea of, let's also reduce electric loads. So, let's do whatever we can to reduce loads. But yeah, there are now other non-pipe projects across the state.
Yeah, and you all will see, Gavin also might say, you all will see just different projects, not just within Lansing, but in Ithaca as well, roll out over the next couple of years, largely due to some of the investments we're doing after our rate case. So there's about $50 billion worth of investments. And a lot of that is going to be to shore up the infrastructure, because we understand that there's going to be an extra burden that's on the system once everybody starts to switch to electric, which is exciting, but it's a lot of work to catch up on. So Ithaca, in a lot of ways, and when I say Ithaca, I'm talking about the greater Ithaca area, right? Well, Ithaca, in a lot of ways, is going to be the epicenter for the state of some of these innovative projects. We have another project in Norwich, one in Rochester, which are a little bit bigger than this one, but this will be first of its kind in the state. So we're looking forward to it, and hopefully you are too.
Yeah, and so through the CLCPA, so like I say, the IRA money, the federal money, is going to be filtered down through the state. So essentially, eventually, NYSERDA is going to be distributing that some way, or the PSC in some way, which we're not quite sure what that's going to look like. But there are likely to be additional state incentives and programs. We just don't really know what they are at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and NICEAG actually just reduced the incentive slightly, not to criticize this, it's not really a criticism, it's just the fact that, you know, so the incentives do fluctuate. So right now, they're really good, they may go down. You know,
This is pretty special, what's going on here. If you live in these zones, this is not gonna come around again by the time we need a new heating system, for sure.
There are plenty of folks outside of the NPA zones that are jealous of it.
Yeah,
We see them all the time, so. One house over.
Yeah, they have oil and they're
House
spending
across the street.
$500 a month anyway.
I have a question, Sarah. So, as the gentleman mentioned, there's like compressor, when the air source or heat pump, does it make a lot of noise? Like when the airflow or the lift fan go out?
Outdoor unit? No, they're not loud. I mean, we're careful not to put them outside, like right outside someone's bedroom window, because you're used to having nothing there. And then you have something there, and it sounds like something, but they're not exceptionally loud. And, you know, we've put them, like, the first place that we started putting them in when I was, you know, with Snow Planet, we were putting them in at Eco Village. And there was a whole discussion about whether or not it was gonna be too loud, because the houses are literally put right next to each other. So it was really important to be neighborly and not have one unit that's affecting the other. And I remember them coming out to the shop to take a look at the ones we have there. And they were like, okay, turn it up to full blast. And I went in and I was like, hey, turbo power. And they went and really got a little close to it and were like, this is it? They were like, what are we doing here? Like, this is hardly anything.
A lot of folks think about a compressor, they'll think about traditional air conditioners. Those are loud. You can hear them, they sound like a freight train. But air source heat pumps, ground source as well, are very quiet. Air source heat pumps are specifically designed to be quiet. They're built specifically not to be loud and noisy. Even at full blast, a large unit, you can stand right next to it and have a casual conversation with somebody without having to really raise your voice. So I've got 3 of them in my house.
Yeah,
One of them's right underneath my master bedroom, I hope they can't hear it. And the indoor units are even quieter. They're almost silent. So manufacturers understand that, you know, if they want people to invest in these things, they have to, you know, accommodate very well. So they spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that they're almost silent.
Can it be turned off?
Sure.
Outside the recording studio?
It's off. You turn it.
Almost like.
the other piece is the water heaters do tend to make some noise as well. And so those are usually, you know, if you can, just something to think about, you know, you're gonna wanna be in the basement or maybe in a garage or somewhere that, not in your living space. And they also pull, like Jared said, they pull a little bit of heat out of the room. So, which is great in the summer, not so great in the winter. But it's not a lot, a couple degrees maybe.
And they dehumidify.
They dehumidify. But they also are taller because they have that heat pump. It's essentially a water heater with a heat pump on top. So if you have a crawl space or limited height, you have to just think about some of these things, but they work great.
The newest generation of heat pump water heaters that are in the market now are very quiet. Actually, we've seen a couple of the next gen ones unit. And even at running at full power, I mean, you know, they're very quiet. That's another thing that manufacturers have realized. Again, they want somebody to buy the products, they have to accommodate, so they do a pretty good job.
That's great.
How quickly do they heat the water? I'm asking because I have teenage kids who like to think.
Well, if I can, I mean, so if I could just say that it's a tank.
Is it comparable to?
So it's an insulated tank that's always being heated. It's not, so if you were to start with cold water, that's another issue. But it's not like an on-demand system. It's a tank that's always hot. And then, yeah, if you have to start from cold, it takes a while.
Yeah.
that's not the case.
I mean, there, you size them just like you do with gas, so, yeah.
It takes longer, but that's why it's key to sizes, but to how much hot water you need at any given time. So there's a design aspect to that.
You know how many gallons your current one?
It's tiny. It's big, but it's got a hot water coil.
Oh, so it's connected
That's
to the
different,
water,
that's a
yeah.
sidearm tank, that's a little different. Yeah. That's almost an instant.
Like a tankless sort of.
Yeah.
But if we take out a hot water heater, gas hot water heater, and replace it with an electric, we have another building, you know, our studio, where it doesn't have actually huge demand for hot water most of the time, and we put in a tankless electric resistance heater, that still would qualify for the pipe.
If you remove the gas appliance, you get that money.
If we take it out and not have hot water, it would still count. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As far as the air source systems, if you start to notice them, so more and more businesses have them, you'll notice, just start looking for them and you will see them just about everywhere. And you can get up close to them and, you know.
If you have a geothermal system, you won't notice anything.
Yeah.
Everything is underground or in the basement.
And again, deciding which one to go with is kind of based on coming to that and checking it out.
Absolutely.
Deciding what's the best.
Yep. Yep.
So geothermal, we haven't really talked about too much, but it requires piping either horizontally or vertically. That's, you know, several hundred feet of pipe that is usually looped. So it requires some amount of real estate. You know.
Yeah, it's either getting a 40-foot drill rig into your front yard or a backhoe in there and digging up the ground. But once it's all done, you can put it back to the way it was. And the pipe lasts for, it's guaranteed for 50 years, but I'm sure it lasts more like 100, 150. We have plastic pipe floating in the ocean, so it's made of polyethylene, same pipe is used in the gas industry, so it's very robust pipe. And so that one, I think, it's geothermal's, you know, it is more efficient. It is not always applicable in every home, just due to lots and the ability to get a drill rig in or enough area to put the piping in. But it is certainly the most efficient option on the market.
Geology.
Yeah.
I originally thought we couldn't consider geothermal because we're on bedrock, but then I heard it's better to do bedrock because then you don't have the silt and sand falling in the hole.
Yeah, so basically, just for drilling aspects, all they do is they drill roughly, you know, 6-inch hole, sometimes a little smaller. And then they, once that's done, they remove the drill rig, they insert a plastic pipe that's got a little U-bend on the bottom. They stick it all the way down the hole, and then they fill it back in with what's called a bentonite grout. And that is a grout. It's essentially a clay that seals the hole. And that if you abandon a gas well or other underground things, you seal it with the same material. So we're leaving it just as good as we had it before, but we put a plastic pipe in there that we can now circulate fluid through. And yes, one of the nice things about around here is you have generally shale, and you tend to have a lot of water movement in that shale, and that water movement moves heat quite well. So I would say in general, you do have more improvement in water temperatures because of that, and therefore more efficient equipment. So drilling vertically around here is very good.
Is it vertical, is there a big cost difference between vertical versus horizontal?
It's about double
For horizontal,
for vertical.
for vertical? So-
The cost of the rig, I mean, they're $500,000 to $1 million rigs, and
Yeah, it's less.
you're paying for that, you're paying for it to show up on your door, and the expertise of the people who are doing it.
And how far do you need to go horizontal?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the size of the equipment. It's really based on the load of your building. So it kind of varies. I would say a typical home, vertically, you might go 500 feet, kind of range vertically, and then horizontally, there's certainly multiple designs, but you could say roughly 250 feet long by maybe, if we're looking at a 4-ton, you might go 40 feet by 250. And certainly you can shrink that in other ways, but that's kind of roughly what you're looking at.
And it's not the full 40 feet that you dig up, 6 feet down.
Yeah, generally you're digging like a small trench, doing the length of that, moving dirt into that, putting the pipe in, and then going to the next trench. And so, and that can all be done in a fairly quick period of time. So it's not that's not a long process.
And how deep does that need to be? 8?
That's usually 5 to 6 feet. You certainly can go deeper, there's no harm in it, but now you need a larger excavator to do that.
There are a lot of YouTube videos and photographs online that show those types of installations if you really want to get a feel for it, different locations and so forth. It's an interesting process, so.
If you have some other reason to dig a giant pit, that's the perfect time to.
We have a brochure on heat pumps that just a very basic information on both geo and air source up there if you're interested. It shows the trench with the slinky coils. Yeah, and it is possible also to run it into a pond, although not usually recommended.
Yeah, I like to say it's kind of a black art
Okay,
pond loop, so
we'll rewind that.
that's a more,
From the
it's a
record.
little more difficult to predict. So in general, I recommend going closed loop, which means
Well,
going.
closed into a pond, no?
Yeah, certainly you can, but it's still more unpredictable. So, yeah, you gotta have good water movement in a pond, and you gotta have it deep enough. And so it's just, it's just a little bit more tricky. So being able to go horizontal or vertical, I would say is the most common approach for most contractors.
90% of ponds don't work.
Yeah,
Make it easier.
because you need that water flow in the middle of winter, and that's not always there, so. Any other questions, or?
All right, well, feel free to hang out, have some food. Definitely need people to take some of that, so I don't have to take it all.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.